All right, when was the first time that you were allowed to engage with adult content? Wait. No. Not like that. I'm talking R-rated movies, M-rated games, or albums that had explicit lyrics. The thing was, normally the only way that you could get your hands on an album that had explicit lyrics on it, or a game that involved shooting people in the face, was having like a cool, much older sibling, or having a parent that just didn't really care. Now, any kid with a Kindle Fire can just pull up a web browser and watch a life-altering video if they just let the autoplay feature run on YouTube, and then 10 minutes later, they're watching a fatal car crash compilation. But the thing was, in the dark ages, normally it would be the good cop parent who would be like, they're just kids. Like, it's fine. They'll be okay. It's not like letting them play a teen-rated game when they're 5 years old is really going to affect how they're going to turn out as an adult. Hey, young parents who are watching this video right now, I am a prime example of letting your 5-year-old play a teen-rated game. And look, they end up fat, stupid, and standing in front of a green screen. I remember the first time that me and my brother got our hands on something that was outside of that little kid realm of media. In 2005, everybody had a PlayStation 2. Your friends, your neighbors, that homeless guy who lived down the street and would eat bugs for breakfast and pray to the sky hoping it would rain gold coins for him. The PlayStation 2 was the console to have. Around 2005 or 2006, my brother's best friend, he had gotten a teen-rated game for his PlayStation 2. Now's your time to place your bets on what game it was. Yeah, it was Ratchet and Clank. Every game that my brother and I had in our game catalog, they were designed for the audience that we were. Diaper-pooping, thumb-sucking toddlers with the most minimal form of developed consciousness. So just even being at that friend's house and holding this case with a big cat with a gun that's the same size as he is, and he's got a little robot as a backpack, and keep looking around and seeing the T at the bottom of the case. This game, it felt like the forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve were instructed not to eat. Guns, futuristic skateboarding, cartoonish characters, space adventure. In hindsight, I mean, Ratchet and Clank is really the most appealing thing that you could entice a little boy with. Again, not like that. Objectively, I mean, in the grand scheme, it made sense that it was rated T for violence, but it's really about it. Because actual content-wise, it was just toilet humor. Who would find toilet humor funnier than a 5-year-old?
Me, a 25-year-old.
I have a core memory of watching Ratchet go up to the plumber and saying, "Look, plumber's crack," and laughing so hysterically that my lungs would collapse on themselves and my eyes were shooting out of my skull like I was a cartoon character. This game, it was really the pinnacle of our childhood PS2 experience. I recently picked it back up, and let me tell you what, it is absolutely dope. You know what? I think it's time that we take a deep look into Ratchet and Clank is a third-person shooter platform game that was released in 2002. And some might say the second biggest event that happened in the early 2000s. Being created as an exclusive intellectual property for the Sony Computer Entertainment, whatever they were called, this game, it was only released on one console, the PlayStation 2. Being developed by the absolute wizards and witches over at the game development studio that created probably top 3 most favorite game of all time for me, Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. Insomniac Games, they were just coming off the high of releasing one of the hottest bangers to ever touch the Laserdisc system of the PlayStation. Spyro. This silly little purple goober launched Insomniac into the stratosphere of game development. So after Spyro's huge commercial success, they started to pivot to a project that would move away from all of the bright, pretty colors, platforming mechanics, and cartoony characters to focus more on a game like Tomb Raider that would have more of a riveting story. Look how that turned out. The team over Insomniac, they were absolutely filled to the brim with stinkers about this bold new project idea. They even pitched it to the Sony Computer Entertainment top dogs, and they got a big hard no on that project. They said people love the cartoony characters in these bright, expansive worlds, and platforming gameplay was the creme de la crop of games for the past 2 decades. So Insomniac, they got back on the horse and they started chefing up what we know as Ratchet and Clank today. The idea for Ratchet and Clank, it all spawned from this one employee, one of the first 3 employees at Insomniac Games, and his name was Brian Hastings. He literally just off the dome in a meeting one day spit out the idea that helped create Ratchet and Clank as we know it today.
Wouldn't it just be great to play as like a fuzzy space alien and his robot friend, traveling the galaxy from like planet to planet and collecting different weapons and gadgets?
And from that sentence on, development was cooking at full throttle. Kind of funny to me to picture that some of the world's greatest ideas really just came from somebody spitting out a sentence, and everybody around them heard it and just kind of said, yeah, let's do that. I'm assuming that's exactly how that situation went for, like, I don't know, the sandwich. Man, I love bread. And I love meat. I wish I could just eat them together. And
oh my god!
Taking influences from Star Wars, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Super Mario 64, and Super Metroid, Ratchet and Clank ended up becoming the witty and insightful platform shooter that we know it as today. This initial IP launch has spiraled out into multiple sequels being released, a comic book series, and even a full feature-length film being released alongside 2016. And as of June of 2007, this game has sold over 3.1 million copies. Ratchet and Clank, it starts you off with 2 different stories happening in tandem of each other, on opposite sides of the galaxy. Our first main protagonist, his name is Ratchet, and in this universe, his creature is known as a Lombax, a cat-human hybrid that got its engineering bachelor's degree from Purdue. Are you curious on how a cat-human hybrid gets created? Well, just ask Shane Dawson. Ratchet, he's on his home planet of Veldin, working on his ship as he looks off into the stars, dreaming of interplanetary adventure. Across the galaxy, a clanker factory is pumping out these bad boys like it's one of Elon Musk's wet dreams. He sees a chrome dome with a TV for a mouth, playing a message that leaves him with a look of utter shock and awe on his face. He grabs the chrome dome with the TV mouth, runs away from his manager, but conveniently he finds a McDonald's play slide that just allows him to slide directly down into the cockpit of a ship. He zooms away from the planet as fast as robotically possible, getting shot at by the other
spark cancers
that are following after him. And then he Princess Diana's directly into Ratchet's planet. And Ratchet, he basically just comes over to the wreckage and he just says, yeah, I'm gonna steal that. He yoinks the little tin can up. As Ratchet is working on his ship, the little wireback wakes up and shows him the message that he stole from the factory. The video starts and it shows us the main antagonist of this game, Chairman Drek. Chairman Drek, he explains that his entire homeworld has been overrun with overpopulation and pollution. And his plan to save his race is to go around and extract pieces of other planets to kind of like Frankenstein his own. Once the video finishes up, Clank asks Ratchet for help from a superhero figure that's plastered on his garage wall. An absolute sloopy doopus named Captain Quark. Ratchet and Clank, they start bantering a little bit more, and eventually Clank kind of gives up this knowledge to Ratchet that he has the ability to start ships for him, which is convenient because that's the one piece of Ratchet's ship that he's missing, is the ship starting piece they work out this deal where while Clank is allowed to go to these different planets and investigate what's going on, Ratchet, his end of the deal is that he just gets to start his ship, leave his homeworld, and just go explore a lot of these new planets. Pause for a minute here. Can we just address the fact on how hard George Lucas cooked with Star Wars? It feels like every space adventure story that came after Star Wars, it really all draws inspiration from the creator himself. A perfect example of this is right in front of your eyes. Ratchet and Clank. Lonely guy who loves to tinker on starships is stranded on a desert planet. Random robot delivering a message about impending universal doom crash lands on said deserted planet. Robot and lonely guy, they pair up to go see what's going on about this impending doom in the universe. Space Doom is a machine that can blow up planets. The lonely guy and the robot, they team up to take down that machine that can destroy planets. The parallels between these two interplanetary adventures are just unmatched. Hey, if it's a winning formula, why change out the variables? Anyway, let's get back to your regular scheduled programming. Ratchet and Clank, they hunt down Quark just to eventually find out that Quark is a washed up hack that's taking money from Drek so he can be the spokesman of his new planet. Ratchet gets revenge on Quark for, trying to unplug his life support. And finally, after some time, Ratchet kind of realizes, hey, yeah, maybe there is something bad about this corporate fartbreath that's trying to destroy planets for his own benefit. Drek eventually says that he's gonna blow up Ratchet's home planet of Velden, make a spot in the cosmos for his new perfect planet. Ratchet and Clank, they fight him, and then they launch Drek up into his new planet. They use this planet They use this planet destroying machine against him to blow up his planet, and then at the end, they have that cutscene. They have that cutscene that will even make a grown man cry. Ratchet and Clank are now friends. That's it. That's the story. The story is a really fun one, especially with the different character arcs and the banter that kind of happens between the two main characters with Ratchet and Clank as they poke at each other and then eventually figure out each other's personalities. Seeing these two just take jabs at each other while they disagree on what mission needs to be accomplished, it's pretty fun. So look, the question is, what keeps players invested in continuously coming back to this game when objectively kind of a knockoff of Star Wars? I believe I have narrowed it down to two different elements. While most other space operas, they have your typical roster of factions pushing and pulling against each other. Rebellions versus empires. Aliens versus natives. Nature versus man. The true enemy of Ratchet and Clank is capitalism at its purest form. First off, because most games, while you need materials to play the game, you can normally go around and collect these materials to help you progress. While this is possible in Ratchet and Clank, you can swing your wrench around and break up boxes to get ammo and stuff. You mainly have to purchase new weapons through the Gadgetron vendor. And look, the preposterous part about this is the fact there's basically a spot where you can buy military grade weapons on any street corner of any planet that you visit. Thank God that's not a reality. Right? People constantly joke about the Neuralink getting implanted into your head and then flashing casino ads at you or male enhancement performance pills. The thing is this actually happens to you in the game as well. You'll be fighting up against some enemies and that soothing lady voice will pop in over the screen and you'll hear it in your ears. The Devastator is a wonderful weapon to use against Blargian enemies. Purchase one today at a Gadgetron vendor. While it's made to be useful for you and to kind of help guide you throughout Ratchet's adventure, isn't that kind of the philosophy of all advertisers? Why? You're supposed to help people. Outside of the blatant, purposely put advertisements throughout the game and the purchasing of items at the Gadgetron vendor, obviously, Chairman Drek is the enemy of this story. But as Sun Tzu once famously said in The Art of War, and Green Day once directly spoke in my eardrums through an iPod Shuffle in 2009, know your enemy. So the question is, what does Chairman Drek objectively want out of all of his actions? Is it power? Is it order? Is it accolades? No. It's just money. At the end of the game, Drek looks Ratchet directly in the face and tells him that the entire reason that all of this is even going on is because he polluted the world through overproduction. He gets paid to build the new world, and he's going to continuously repeat that cycle over and over and over again. This isn't some war between democracy and authoritarianism, or the human race versus an alien race. This is some greasy, short man with a receding airline trying to catch some motion. The almighty dollar is pushing this guy to destroy worlds and overpopulate them and overproduce on them. And selling the solution back to his people over and over again to repeat the sales cycle. While something like this would never happen in real life, capitalism is one of the variables in this game that helps separate itself from other space operas. I mean, I guess, except that one time in Star Wars, with that one casino scene that showed all the ding-dongs hanging out in there. They were the guys who sold the weapons to both the Resistance and the First Order. Ugh. Anyway, and don't get me wrong, capitalism and consumerism can be moderately fine if regulated to a completely good amount. Because, like, look, I would have never had the experience of pulling this absolute monster of a chase card from a Destined Rivals pack and blowing a blood vessel out of my eyeball from screaming out of excitement if I lived in a
mud hut and traded beans for clothes.
But the unchecked, unregulated capitalism is truly the motivation behind Drek's world-destroying actions. And that capitalism is really what makes it stand out from other space adventures. Egoism is like the center point of this entire game. You can't go 5 seconds in this game without bumping into somebody who's just trying to do what's best for them and not for the collective of the greater good. The entire reason of why this adventure even starts to begin with is the fact that Ratchet sees that he can get something out of Clank. This man had absolutely zero interest in becoming a hero or saving lives. And then on the way to checking out these different planets, Ratchet wants to go help out this one guy who crash landed, but it turns out it's just like his favorite hoverboarder. It's because he wants to meet someone that he personally thinks is dope. And eventually, outside of Ratchet's main objective to try to help out Quark or like visit these other planets and whatnot, when Quark double crosses him, it's like a flip switches, and his entire purpose in this game is to get revenge against Quark. Our main character here is plagued with egoism. Ratchet, he fights for pride. Quark, he fights for fame. Drek, he fights for money. Every character here is just acting on behalf of their own self-interest. And most annoyingly, almost all the NPCs here are trying to squeeze every last dime out of you for absolutely nothing. Everybody just trying to make a quick buck. You go into these overrun cities that are completely decimated by the Blarg. You wipe out their occupation of the area, and inevitably you'll bump into that main objective for that mission. It'll be a war general just standing there, and he'll be like, I got this information for you if you want it. He'll make you pay 2,000 bolts for a video. The scientist from the Blarg research station will be trapped and pinned up against these alien monster enemies. You save his life, and he goes, well, I guess I do have this thing that makes, weapons and ammo cheaper at Gadgetron vendors. He makes you go out and risk your life again for some duty metal that he wants. Hey, dude, don't you think the whole saving your life thing was enough of an exchange? Or even like at the physical fitness course, where you signed up because you thought that you were going to be able to meet Captain Quark at the end, and you were promised a prize at the end of it. You complete the course, and of course, the big fat two-legged toaster makes you buy the prize off of her that you earned. The only person out of this entire game who actually just gives you a reward for saving his life, the hoverboard champion. You save his life from the sand sharks, and he gives you a board for going on and hitting some nasty tricks on the pow. The only character in this entire game, the only one who isn't consumed by egoism, it's Clank. Clank, sorry for calling you all those robophobic slurs. I'm sorry. Maybe Clank, maybe you're one of the good ones. The combination of utilizing this overall capitalistic approach for its enemy, showcasing a world where everybody's just looking out for their best interest, and introducing players to this completely new roster of characters through only comedic banter is really, objectively, what makes this story so dope. The art style in this game is one of the most iconic pieces in its legacy. The thing about most sci-fi adventures or these space operas adventures is they always try to find a kind of like tie it back a little bit to realism. Trying to have a player or consumer of these medias kind of picture themselves as this main character, normally using like a human type person to create characters and visual aids that really helped kind of mimic the world that we see around us every day. The thing is that we saw this quest for realism in the early 2000s, as every game console on the block was really trying to push the boundaries of reality when it came to creating their graphics and their experiences. Ratchet and Clank, it took this notion of realism, made it bite the curb, and stomped its hover boot directly through the back of its skull. This game is a cartoon-styled masterpiece. With very light and soft edges on the sprites, outlandish character and weapon design, and polished chrome accents all around the world to give this larger-than-life look to its overall atmosphere. While this game, it really did try to market itself as an action-adventure game. It really was a platformer at heart. So a lot of the art decisions that were made inside of the game actually revolved around a lot of things that you would normally see inside of a platforming experience. Paths that made themselves extremely clear on where the player needed to go next, but also incorporated a lot of things that you would also see inside of a shooter. Long and narrow hallways, blocks to take cover behind, claustrophobic spaces for close-up battles. And to make use of this console's new computing power, there was one design choice here that was used alongside the platforming to really help build in that world building and immersion and all that and more, and platforming and building and playing the game. And a lot of these platformers, you'll normally just like have literally like a floating platform in the middle of a map. No. Not Ratchet and Clank, baby. The architecture across these levels, they actually made sense here. There were panels and rivets that held up these support beams. And in the process of making this video, I actually referenced and read the book that was called The Art of Ratchet and Clank. Surprise! I know how to read. And I love the metaphor that they use inside of it to kind of reference the architecture style. It was chunky in its construction, like a Tonka truck. The worlds that were introduced in Ratchet and Clank are a center point of what made this game so incredibly unique. From the retro futurism designs of those sprawling metropolis landscapes, to the desert wastelands of Ratchet's home, or even a whole planet that was dedicated to a beachfront resort. The variety of experiences in these worlds really shaped a vision that showed you that you were exploring a whole galaxy, not just one defunct planet. While most of the planets here, they have a very distinct theme to them. The overarching theme that incorporates itself into every world is nature working in tandem with the man-made architecture. Lively and bright plants popping up in the middle of a city, allowing the player to focus in on literally any part and still be filled with a little element of surprise. The design of the worlds incorporates such a larger scope for that player to feel immersed in. The best way to feel the gravity of these planets, not literally like the metaphorical gravity, but the best way to feel like the scope of these planets is the moment that you land your ship and you pop out and you pop that, you looking dope, you pop that swag and you pop out, I don't know. First thing you want to do is turn the camera slowly. Pan around, just look at everything around you. This is huge. The way the designers really created such a sprawling landscape on every planet that you landed on really gave you that feeling of grandeur and scale. The cartoonish art style, the simple yet soft edges of the graphics, and the large yet contained atmosphere of the worlds is really what made this art style in the worlds so dope. Gameplay in Ratchet and Clank, it really comes down to two specific elements: platforming, shooting. Ratchet and Clank is like Super Mario Sunshine, but instead of Ratchet having a flood, he has a rocket launcher that could have solved the Middle East crisis before it even started. Which exactly is what the entirety of this game's purpose was. Take a console mascot, give him the ability to blow a dude's head off. This game is an all-out bloodbath. Well, not really blood. Probably be more like oil. Mother clanker! Wide variety of dope and creative weapons that you can collect along your journey, ranging from throwable explosives to your common submachine guns, all the way up to like a ray gun that just turns enemies into chickens. The wide variety of weapons that are unlocked throughout the progression of the game make it truly exciting to eradicate and eviscerate these enemies with fun and creative options. While there are a variety of options of weapons here, you do have to spend your hard-earned bolts on them. But the thing here is that the real objective is to save your bolts. Like you're 12 again with a paper route looking to save up for a new bike. The saving goal here is to purchase the most iconic weapon in the entire game, the Rhino. Look, if you've never played this game before and you don't know what the Rhino is, and you're this far in the video, first off, props to you. Thank you for sticking around while I run my yapper at quantum speeds. Second off, let's talk about the meaning behind the acronym Rhino. Rhino, it's just an acronym that stands for Rip Ya a New One. If your dopamine receptors are absolutely cooked from Pokemon cards like mine are, but hey, no. That's not what this means in that context. Ripping you a new one is a reference to a little portion of your body that's actually on your backside, and it's responsible for transferring poop out. The Rhino is the most swagged up Master Sword adjacent to Zelda weapon in this entire game. It shoots 7 heat-seeking missiles at one time, and they're all locked onto enemies. They will absolutely destroy them in one shot. While the Rhino is objectively the dopest weapon in this game, it's not a realistic goal for anybody who's just on their first playthrough. It costs the same amount of bolts as like what a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in a metropolitan area should cost before BlackRock and all those goons decided to get together, start spanking each other and buying up the houses from everybody, taking them away from us, making us rent for eternity. So for the average first-time player, you are limited to the weapons that are at the Gadgetron vendors. So what weapons here are an absolute necessity to fight up against this Blargian invasion? We're going to take some time out to highlight the top 5 weapons that any average Ratchet and Clank first-time player should utilize and stuff in their back pocket for a little bit of destruction time. The Pyrosator. Let's just say Pyrosator. The Pyrosator is just a fancy name for a flamethrower. This weapon is extremely effective when you have a horde of small enemies that are running up to you trying to sell you their mixtape. This weapon, it is really effective in close combat, and it allows you to just spin in circles, absolutely cooking the faces off your enemies with 1,000 suns. Oh, the Pyrosator, God, I can't even say it. The Pyrosator. No, we're not going to do this again. The flamethrower, never my first choice when I'm pulling out a weapon when I'm in a combat situation. It was always just kind of a handy backup while I ran out of ammo for my other guns. Visibomb gun is an incredibly effective tool in your world exploration. I will say though, the one thing about this gun that pisses me off is the fact that the game legitimately kind of paywalls you to have it behind a specific level. Look, when I was running through the game, I was trying to be conservative, and I was trying to hold up all my bolts and only collect ammo that I found on the streets and whatnot, and buy only a few different guns to keep in my roster so I could have enough bolts to get the Rhino before I fought up against Drake. You literally cannot proceed throughout the Gemlik base without the Visibomb gun. There's a force field tower that none of your guns can get to because the force field tower is behind the force field, and if you shoot up, it's just not possible. So I had to run all the way back to the Gadgetron vendor. I had to go pick up the gun. I had to go all the way back and shoot it off and destroy out the force field pit. Once I got this gun though, yeah, I found myself using it quite frequently to take down some of the bigger enemies, like flying ships or tanks that needed to get their cheeks rocked. Devastator is just absolutely a goated weapon overall. Well, not really applicable for a lot of those like swarming, like high enemy count, like firefights. It's still incredibly beast when you're trying to take out a bigger enemy from far away. It shoots one heat-seeking missile. You can lock onto a target from a large distance away, knock their socks off with ease. It's also extremely dope when you're trying to take down helicopters, tanks, or any of the other vehicles. The Devastator is definitely worth giving some of your bolts to the Gadgetron Industrial Complex. The Blaster is definitely the second most beasted up weapon in the entire game. Replicating a Glock with an extendo mag and a trigger switch, this is really the most effective way to take down any sort of small or large enemies within this situation. The thing about the Blaster is that you can zoom into the first person mode while you're playing, kind of use it as a sniper and go to take out enemies before you even walk down towards them. There's plenty of times where I found myself not wanting to take on 50 enemies at once. So I'd just peek behind a corner and I'd zoom into the first person and pop a round off at them like I was Alec Baldwin on a movie set. Bolstering a 200 round capability for ammo, the Blaster is ultimately a tried and true classic for any Ratchet and Clank playthrough. There's a lot of discussion here about what is the most effective and dopest weapon that you can use throughout a run through of this game. I believe that I have come to the definitive answer for this question. Not including the Rhino. Yeah, baby, it's the Glove of Doom! Dude, when you're in enemy territory and you're getting attacked by 50 different birds that all have the helmet on or whatever, those Captain Quark knockoff ding-dongs are shooting their little fire lava blaster wave guns at you why even spend the time trying to take them out one by one with a blaster or with the bombs or whatever? You toss all 10. Every single Agent of Doom ball that you have out your pocket, and you watch them do all the work, and you take all the credit for it. All the creative weapons in this game, it really does come down to personal preference, though, of what you believe will make your interplanetary adventure all that more exciting. Platforming is such an enormous part of Ratchet and Clank, from the physical fitness obstacle course to navigating the thin walkways of a space station. Ratchet and Clank, it really harnesses in that platforming feeling of old 3D platformers from the Super Mario series, like Super Mario 64 or Super Mario Sunshine. Incorporating platforming into this shoot 'em up style game was such an incredible way to showcase the ways that you could make a hybrid style experience to create something new entirely, and to show how those two different game styles could work in tandem. Not only do you need to be strategic on how you use your weapons, you need to be careful while you're crossing over that bridge, and one little misinput will have you slipping and falling off it like you're a frat brother who just drank his 26 keg Natty Light. Dude, quick question here. Out of any game style in the world, I'm talking first-person shooters, I'm talking strategy games, I'm talking RPGs. Out of any other game in the world, am I the only one who rages the hardest on a platforming game? It's just so funny to think back to playing some of these levels, falling off a bridge at one of the dumbest parts and just screaming, "I'm gonna kill myself. This game is actually made for morons. God, this is the worst game ever." And then I just picked the controller up and continue to play the game that was literally made for children. But look, the incorporation of platforming here, it really did add just that little bit extra slice of cheddar cheese onto the whole experience of playing Ratchet and Clank. Outside of your primary objective of grabbing every single gun that you can get and destroying every piece of living matter that surrounds you and doing kickflips and backflips off different objectives, there are little mini games that are actually sprinkled in throughout the gameplay experience that add a lot of variety and break up that repetitive nature of just a normal shoot 'em up or a normal platforming game. Some of these different mini games that are presented to you, like some of them would be like the code breaking ones, using the hydro displacer, just cruising down a rail with your magna boots. The code breaking games were actually really fun because it kind of made you feel like a criminal in the game, and it was a nice little change of pace to allow you to use the strategic part of your brain to figure out where exactly the lasers needed to go without getting blocked, and that actually, it was really fun and added a lot of variety. Like the hydro displacer levels, those were incredibly fun because it's just taking water out from one portion of the room, going into the next room, putting water back up, and then swimming down so you can get to the next level. It was a really creative way to add in this kind of mini game or puzzle solving aspect too. And the grind boots, just dope. I don't know, it's just dope. I like sliding down, flipping and stuff. It's just dope. There must have been a bill that got snuck past Bill Clinton's desk when he was president in the 90s that required almost every piece of popular media from the late 90s into the early 2000s to have something relating to standing on a board. This was the culture at the time. I mean, as I talked about in my Tony Hawk video, Tony and his ragtag group of hooligans, they had the entire population of America brainwashed in the early 2000s to thinking that flipping a piece of wood with wheels on it was the dopest thing ever. And they were right. So how did Ratchet and Clank take this element of skating and incorporate it and time capsule it into this game? The hoverboarding sections. Like I said earlier, at one of the portions of the game, you bump into this guy that Ratchet idolizes. His name, Skid McMarks. First off, I just want to note that I have played this game multiple times in my life, multiple times, since I was a child, through college, high school, now into my adult years. I played this game multiple times. Not once did I ever realize that Skid McMarks, his name was a reference to something else besides him just being a skater. I had absolutely no idea. And it took my girlfriend going, "Oh, his name's Skid McMarks?" Ha! And I was like, "What's funny about that?" And she was like, "It's Skid Marks." And I was like, I never even knew that. Really cool that I didn't realize that they were making a reference to some doo-doo and some undies. And there's a level where you have to bump in, it's like, "Oh, Captain Cork is there. He's the guy. He's going to give you a trophy, and you're going to be a champion of the hoverboard." So then you get on the hoverboard and you actually go out on the race, and it is pretty fun the way that you race through, and that you have to hit these specific boosts to get ahead of everybody. You destroy boxes, you go through the boosts, you go through these little hoops that boost you through. There are a few different flying missions that are sprinkled in throughout your intergalactic adventure. One of them is on the tropical planet, the one that's like it's like a resort. It's like Slim Jims. It's like in the tropical resort, and then another one is when you're fighting up against Quark in like the final boss battle. When you're in the flying missions, the main objective of this is to take down a lot of the other dogfighting ships that are coming at you. And when they explode, they either give you health or ammo. But normally there's one big boss that you need to kill. So for example, we're back again. When you're on the tropical island, You have to go take down the Blargian invasion with this big ship that kind of looks like a caterpillar, I guess. And you're shooting it down. You're shooting the missiles at it. And then also when you're fighting Cork, he is like the Blargian ship, and then he has the people that you need to dogfight. Shoot them out, take out his engines. You send him spinning down to the planet, and he ends up being basically like an AutoZone manager, but for Gadgetrons, like trying to slang product. Now, this game is called Ratchet and Clank, am I right? It would just be a travesty to make this beautiful and wonderful character, who I, again, will apologize to for the robo slurs, to just sit on Ratchet's back and sit there like a Labubu that doesn't have the aura of a Satan-possessed, like, voodoo doll. The Clank gameplay options are normally queued up in moments where Ratchet wouldn't, like, typically have availability to go out and discover a lot of these different planets or portions of a planet. Like when Clank had to go to the Blarg research station and he was walking around on the outside. Or Clank going to visit the homeworld of the Blargs with the factories and the completely unbreathable air. But when you're playing as Clank, you're limited to a very small set of mechanics that are playable and usable. But one cool option that pops up here that you don't really have when you're playing as Ratchet pops up, and that is the use of the Gadgetbots. When Clank is perusing through these different parts of the worlds, he has the ability to crack open the Gadgetbots from their little home and use his mind to let them do his bidding. He does like this sweet little Jedi mind trick and blasts 5G radiation directly into their noggins and tells them exactly what to do. He's directing their every move. But while you're using them, you are given 4 different options on how you can control these bots. Attack, wait, follow, enter. You use these functions to help you work your way through a lot of the different puzzle sections, or have like the nanobots beat the living shit out of a frog, or have the nanobots like go into their little robot house and explode, or they go in there and die. I don't know, they go in there and they just disappear, or whatever they do. And that normally opens the door for you. The Clank missions were a fun addition that allowed you to play as the secondary main character and really get to experience in a lot of different elements that would not have been possible without if we were playing as Ratchet. Yeah! Dude, the Mega Clank missions, absolutely beast. You were a 5-year-old in the 2000s like I was. You know, the concept of just wanting to pilot something that was enormous was just the dopest thing imaginable. This concept that really cemented itself with young boys at the time, with the Megazord from Power Rangers, or like the Transformers, which are just so sick. So when you got Clank to upgrade into this massive giant beast, really made you feel like that you were just the master of the universe, slapping away Blarg enemies like they were flies, stomping on crates of bolts, fighting up against other giant robots. This was the absolute desire and dream of literally any kid. The platforming, the gunplay, the mini games, all combined to really make a completely unique experience that had rarely been seen in a 3D platforming game before. Combination of a story that retells like a normal space opera, but with its own unique twists, an art style and world building elements that completely cemented itself as this like retro futuristic atmosphere, and gameplay that constantly kept players on the edge of their seats. All of those things combined, that's what made this game incredibly dope. All right, you gotta play this game. Ratchet and Clank were an absolute staple of this time period, especially as one of the largest repeat mascots for the PlayStation. There's a few different ways that you can play this game. There's an obvious choice here, which is to take your copy of Joe Dirt out of your PlayStation 2 that's being used in your grandma's camper right now as a DVD player, and actually plug that bad boy back in and get to ripping. But also with this game's popularity, it was also re-released for the PlayStation 3 and also for the PlayStation Vita. There was also a remake, and do not get that confused with a remaster, that I actually really enjoyed for the PlayStation 4. But it really didn't hold like the same grittiness or character development that the original 2002 game had. Still worth a playthrough on the PlayStation 4 if you have the time. They did add new weapons and new mechanics and storylines, as this game is actually told from Cork's perspective while he's in jail. And you know, there's another obvious way that you can play this game. I'm just gonna say a random collection off the top of my head. Oh, it's like a lottery. Oh, I'm just gonna say a random collection of letters and numbers off the top of my head. Don't write them down. Don't Google them. And don't install the software that actually has the exact same combination of letters and numbers if you Google it. Don't do it. PCS X2. Oh, whoa, that was weird. Did your parents let you play T-rated games when you were 5? What is your favorite obscenity or self-deprecating phrase that you love to scream out when you die during a platforming section? Let me know in the comments. And as always, this channel was made to promote my band. Check out our debut album, Destined to Conquer, All right, man, this is it. Thanks for stopping by. This is Cornborn. What up? Welcome to the end of the video. This segment is called America's Dopest Home Videos. Today we got a submission of an absolute sick drift. So I'm going to tag him in the video. Go check him out. Wyatt, you're a beast. Peace. I'm signing out.